Hello and welcome to Temple Distilling. This is our tasting room and production facility right behind me here in Linwood, Washington, just north of Seattle. Chances are you are tuning into this video because you've received one of our lovely at-home tasting kits that includes all of our kind of 5 main dried gins that we make currently. We've always got special releases and little things like that going, but these gins represent a wonderful kind of travel through the world of gins. They're all very different in flavor profile and makeup, and I'm excited to taste through them with you. If you don't have one of those tasting kits and happen to just find this video, you can always head over to our website at templedistilling.com and purchase one, or stop by the tasting room anytime. We're open Friday through Sunday every week. So without further ado, we'll start to dive into the different gins, how we're going to taste, and kind of take it from there. So the way I've set it up, we'll talk about gin, kind of how it's made, we'll go through things. I don't want to keep you in suspense with a glass in front of you and tell you not to try it yet, so I'm just going to go through a few of the important things to know as far as how to taste the gins, and what we'll do is work one by one where you can click pause in between to take your time. I don't want to force you to go through 5 different gins in a very short amount of time. You might not remember which one you liked the best afterwards. So we always like to start with our Chapter 1 London Dry. This is our flagship gin. It's why I got into making gin in the first place. I just love old world British style gins, and it was a style that you don't often see here in the States. Oftentimes you've got what's called New American or New Western style gins that have a lot of grain character in the alcohol, some sweetness with that, and then some really kind of funky botanicals, and those gins are great. We do some funky ones too, but I really wanted that properly juniper forward, just the kind of gin that works in any classic gin cocktail. So on the tasting, you've got these glasses. They are tulip style glasses, so they bow out from the bottom and then they come back in like a wine glass. That's what captures the aromatics. It allows you to swirl in the glass to kind of open and bloom what you're going to be smelling. But then at the very top, it tapers back out again a little bit. That's because you don't want too much concentration. What you can have happen with spirits, because the ethanol content is so high compared to a wine or beer, you can get your nose drunk, basically. Stick it too far in there right after swirling, it's going to just attack your sensory glands, and it's too much. So key here is to be delicate. When you do pour a sample, we'll just start with the London Dry, so you're going to have something to sip while we talk. But you're going to pour half of your 50 milliliter sample bottle, so you can split them. Should fill it about this much, and then you just want to swirl it and then stop. Either set it down, hold it for a second, leave it to kind of resettle again, and then just take a slight sniff from the top. Don't dig your nose in, just sniff across the top like that. And that's going to start to train your nose to go, okay, it's kind of knows what it's going to expect now. Swirl again, and you can start getting deeper and deeper into the glass and picking up those lovely just juniper and citrus notes, some of the earthy and spice notes that we've got in here. And then when you sip, don't take a big gulp, but don't go, sip really small. You really just want to take enough to where it's not gonna overwhelm your mouth, but that you're gonna get all the flavors across as you taste it. No need to hold it in your mouth as it rolls over your tongue. You're going to get all the different aspects of that gin. So the London Dry, as I said, it's why I got into doing gin. We love our juniper forward style gins, and the juniper berries we get from the Tuscany region of Italy. They are these big, beautiful, super fresh juniper berries. Coincidentally, juniper berry is not actually a berry. It's in the conifer family, so think pine cones. That's why a lot of times you get some of those evergreen tree flavors with juniper. They just look like berries, but really we extract the oils from them through the distillation process, and that is what makes a gin a gin. It's where it got its start. People were using juniper berries for all sorts of medicinal purposes. Hundreds of years ago, they were using it to cure stomach ailments and things like that. So they got the taste for it. They liked the taste. They started using wine to preserve some of the mixtures that they made. And then slowly, kind of gin was born. It was a Geneva style from the Dutch that kind of kicked things off. And then once the coffee still was invented, not the kind of coffee that we drink in the morning, but guy's name is coffee, and it's a method of distillation that allowed this pure distillate to be extracted rather than some thicker, heavier distillates. And so that's what kind of gave the world vodka, which is the base to then move into gin. And I'll touch on production things shortly. But go ahead and taste the London Dry. You're going to get that juniper. It's not the grab you by the side of your jaws, super astringent Northwest style juniper that grows here. It's why we decided to go with the Italian juniper. We've got 3 different kinds of orange peel, dried lemon peel. That makes up the citrus component. That's usually what you're going to taste right off the bat. And then Grains of Paradise and Cubeb Berry give it this nice kind of lavender floral note. And then we've got Angelica and Orris root as some of the earthier items to kind of give the gin body and really bind all those lovely flavor oils together. So I'm going to taste with you. It's probably, afternoon, evening your time. I'm not going to lie, it's about 10 a.m. on a Monday, but hey, quality control, right? So I just like to have it kind of roll across my tongue. You're going to get the different flavors, the citrus more on the tip of your tongue, some of the earthier and spicier notes towards the back, and that juniper is going to be what lingers the longest. So this is our go-to for martinis, any of those classic gin cocktails, just a solid choice. It's 90 proof, so it's great for mixing, and one of our favorites. So I will say at this point, go ahead, keep tasting, keep taking your sips, discuss what you're pulling up. We did include that little bottle of tonic, so don't just dive right in and make a G&T right away. Definitely want you to taste it straight, and then afterwards, as you're kind of getting through towards the bottom, go ahead, open that up, and just splash a little bit in there. That is going to open up some of the more subtle notes that are just almost impossible to pull from a 90 proof gin drinking straight. So we like to use that as a tasting modifier, I guess you'd call it. Definitely serves the best with our Navy strength. We'll get to that next, but again, don't be scared. Taste it straight first and then add the tonic as you will. So at this point, go through, keep tasting, go ahead and hit the space bar, press pause, and take your time. And then when you're ready, click through and we will start to the next gin. Cheers. Okay, so you've tasted through the London Dry. I love to start there, and what's really fun now is moving from that up to its bigger, bolder, older brother, the Chapter 1 Navy Strength. So the story behind Navy Strength, it's not just a term of swashbuckling sailors and their ability to hold alcohol. A couple hundred years ago, the British sailors would keep gin on the ships with them as they sailed. They drank it, they used it to take their malaria medicine and all sorts of things, and the concern was these big containers of liquid next to where the gunpowder was kept for the cannons, that if it were to spill on it, it would wet the powder, they wouldn't be able to use it. Well, 114 proof is the flash point for gunpowder, so this was strong enough if it was 114 proof or higher to, if it spilled on the gunpowder, they could still use the powder and ignite it. So that's where the story comes from. I think mostly it's an excuse for them to have some really strong booze on the ship, but whatever works. They use that for taxation purposes as well, because that was an easy way for them to tell how strong a spirit was just by using some gunpowder in a match versus the expensive equipment or non-existent equipment at the time to run an actual proofreading on it. So without further ado, don't let that 114 proof number scare you. This really is a nice citrus forward gin. I found that The citrus oils throughout distillation, they're the lightest and they play the best the higher the proof is. So we remove the grains of paradise and cubeb berry from our London Dry. Those are technically in the pepper family, even though the London is not a peppery gin. But when you dial up the proof, the pepper starts to come through. So we took those out and we replaced them with grapefruit peel, some fresh lime peel, as well as a little bit of cassia bark to give it some body. And this is our citrus forward. It's great for gin and tonics. It's great for last words and Negronis and cocktails where you've got a lot of strong gin friends mixing together, and you don't want to lose the fact that the cocktail has gin in it. So again, the bigger, bolder, older brother to our London Dry, and I'll go ahead and taste along with you. So remember, light smell, get a little closer. Yeah, and you'll see that one, it's got a little bit more of a sharpness to it. That's just the proof, but it is still really smooth. You're going to get all those citrus notes coming through. So go ahead and sit through this one, and when you're done, leave a little bit more than usual, mix some tonic in there, and you're going to notice that tonic kind of bloom and almost cloud up. It's an effect called lushing. When you have a gin that is heavy in citrus, those oils will kind of turn cloudy when they're diluted. And that's not a bad thing. With a citrus forward gin, you want to see that. Those are just lovely natural oils and really give it all of that wonderful flavor. So go ahead and keep tasting, and again, hit spacebar or pause, and we will move on to the next one when you're ready. All right, so next up after the Navy Strength is our woodcut. It is what I refer to as our whiskey drinker's gin. We age the Navy Strength gin, we put it in the barrels at Navy Proof. We age it in used bourbon barrels for about 9 to 12 months, depending on the season and what kind of barrels we're using. But currently we use a local bourbon barrel that is great because I don't need to go through and re-season the barrels, wash out a bunch of flavor. We're able to fill them up days after they're emptied, and it just keeps all of that fresh. And what it's going to do to the gin is infuse it with some of that just bourbon goodness, some of the sweetness and grain profile from it, while at the same time it turns those really citrus heavy botanicals into more like floral and lychee fruit notes that you would get almost in a rum cask whiskey. A lot of complexity. This one made the Wine Enthusiast Top 100 list in 2017, and we love to use it in whiskey cocktails, old fashions or Manhattans. It's also a personal favorite in a Negroni because it just adds that little extra special something. So go ahead and taste, and I'll talk a little bit about distillation as we taste through this one. Basically, gin is the chef's spirit. It's why I fell in love with it. I've been doing culinary things for a lot of years, and it all comes down to the botanicals and the control that you have over those. It's like mixing all your ingredients together to create this amazing dish. Well, gin is kind of that same way. So are cocktails. That's kind of how we fell in love with gin as well. But it's all about the ingredients, and then it's about how you balance them, how you play each of them off of each other. Whiskey's more like baking. You're limited to 3 or 4 ingredients, and the rest is just up to nature and time and patience in order to get your final product. With gin, yes, it has to have juniper berry, but outside of that, there aren't a lot of restrictions in the United States for what you put into it. So here, you're drinking a gin that tastes like a whiskey. Well, it started as a citrus heavy gin with juniper. It then aged in a barrel. We say rested because legally we can't say aged. I won't get into that in this video. There's just some weird little rules like that, but go ahead and taste it. Yeah, it's one of my favorites to just sip on its own. Lovely in all sorts of cocktails, and when we get into it, this is a really fun project that's gonna We're going to keep the flagship woodcuts, but we also have some fun things in the tasting room, like our first single barrel release that is aged for about 2.5 years instead of the 9 to 12 months. And we've got some of our CoAuthor Gin sitting in an amaretto barrel behind me that's been in there for a couple of years, so that'll probably come out sometime in 2022, so stay tuned for that. So go ahead, enjoy the woodcut. Go ahead, spacebar, pause, and then resume when you're ready, and we'll move on to the CoAuthor Gin next. All right, so up next is our CoAuthor Gin. This is one of my just absolute favorite fun projects that we've done. Started a couple years ago. What we wanted to do was do a cocktail competition with a lot of our local area bar accounts and bartender friends, but instead of the normal cocktail competition where you've just kind of got a cash prize, you get a vacation somewhere, well, the brand gives you free t-shirts and booze and things like that. We wanted to actually involve the people who are making these amazing cocktails and work together and co-author a gin together. So went through the competition, and then whoever won, they got to work with me to do we told them, use your imagination, get funky and creative with the botanicals. And this is a great time to talk about how the distillation process works, because this is how we kind of build our recipe. So when I talked to the bartender, in this case Jonathan Stanyard, super talented mixologist, I told him, give me a big list of botanicals that you'd like to see in a gin, however funky and weird. What we do is we've got a small tabletop still, and we will run each of those botanicals individually with a grain neutral spirit, so that it's completely neutral base. You're just picking up the botanical notes. And then we'd end up with a table full of mason jars filled with all these different ingredients. And we'd use pipettes and go through and blend and see which botanicals worked, which ones didn't, which ones played well with others, and slowly worked our way towards the final product. And that's kind of how the recipe development works. When gin is actually made in the still, we put all of those botanicals together, sometimes at different times, but they all end up going together into the kettle on the still to soak overnight. That pulls all the delicate oils out. It's called cold maceration. And then we run the still the next morning, keeping all those botanicals in there. And that heat is what brings the essential oils from the botanicals as well as the alcohol vapor across the still. Distillation is essentially just boiling water and alcohol. The alcohol boils 30-40 degrees lower temperature than the water does. So when you boil that mixture, the alcohol vapor is going to rise, the water is going to stay behind, and along with the alcohol, because it's had time to bind with all of the botanicals and their oils, that comes across the still. There's copper in there to help clean up sulfites and other unwanted flavor compounds. And then it runs through a condenser, which is just a bunch of tubes where we pump cold water around the tubes, and it cools that vapor back into a liquid, and that's what we collect. And that's distillation in a nutshell. It's just kind of heat-forced separation of alcohol from water. And everyone's stills are different. Ours is a little bit unique because we use a bain-marie style. It's a double boiler where we've got an outer jacket full of waste vegetable oil, and that is heated electrically. So it creates this super soft, even heat. Unlike a steam coil or direct fire where you get hot spots in the still, you would never use fresh citrus peel in that case because it could catch and burn in different parts. You'd have consistency issues. We're able to just use our still for gin and focus on keeping all those botanicals down in the still. I'm sure we're going to do more videos on some more technical nerdy things, but just wanted to give you a background on that and how it's made. So the co-authored, it started out with us compounding, but we eventually got to the final recipe, which uses fresh curry leaf, nutmeg, pink peppercorn, lemongrass, and we did a small infusion of saffron post-distillation. So there is a lot going on in this gin, a lot of lovely like Eastern spice flavors. It's just a really fun one to try in the gin cocktails that you like and see how radically different it can be with these types of botanicals. We did a drink with some of our limoncello and the CoAuthor Gin and tonic and lemongrass, and it tasted like a kind of a tom yum soup. It was just wonderful. So go ahead and try this one. This one is in between proof on the London Dry and the Navy Strength, so kind of right in the middle strength wise, but with so much going on, you're going to want to approach this one a little bit more carefully when you smell, but taste wise, just dive in when you're ready. Yeah, you're gonna want to keep revisiting this one to get the different flavors that are coming through, just because there's so much going on. So take a look at the notes sheet that you have for the specific full ingredient list of the botanicals, and this is one that we won't have for a lot longer. We're going to start working on the new co-authored series sometime in 2022 as well. So enjoy, and then pick up a bottle when you can, and go ahead and taste through. Pause or space bar, and we'll finish with Constant Reader here shortly. All right, so Constant Reader. This is a newer gin for us. We released it in June of 2020. Terrible timing, I know. It was designed for the on-premise, so bars and restaurants, to use in their wells for their house pour cocktails, especially a lot of the bars in their area that love to support craft but can't be pouring $30, $40 bottles all day long for their kind of go-to special cocktail menu. So they come in a 1 liter bottle. They're $21 before tax, and it is gin that we distill here. It's a London Dry style, but the method of compounding and distillation that we use, along with the lower proof, this one's 84 proof, it allows us to keep the cost down, packaging and bottle as well. So this one just is a great go-to gin for any, party, gathering, if you're always having friends over and making a bunch of cocktails. It's just a really solid gin. I call it Constant Reader. If you're a reader and fan of Stephen King, as I am, that's what he lovingly refers to his readers as constant readers. So this is for our bartenders, our accounts that are constantly using us, our regulars. We didn't intend a lot of public-facing things with this gin, but it's been really well received. It's a favorite of a lot of our customers to pick up along with other bottles and things like that. So you're going to get juniper in this one. You're going to get some of the citrus notes. There's some licorice root in here, which, don't let that scare you off. It's different than licorice. Licorice root is just kind of an earthier, slightly sweet botanical. Not that there is any sugar in this, but it kind of helps with that really, really smooth mouthfeel. So go ahead, you can lean further in to smell this one. And it's just a really smooth, I like to end with it. It's a nice palate cleanser, so to speak. Yeah, just a lovely all-around gin. Well, thank you for joining us. I love to talk about gin. Gin is one of those just wonderful, wonderful spirits that you spend your whole life traveling the world, tasting through every gin in every region. You're never going to find two that are alike. We've got some other fun things planned besides gin in the warehouse behind what you can see in the window behind me. We've got some new single malt and bourbon stills coming online later in this year or early 2022. We're going directly to doing that properly, going straight to full-size barrels, keeping that operation separate from the gin. They're just two radically different spirits and different ways to make them, and we want to do that with the same care and attention that we've done with our gin. So we're really excited for that, and some fun projects in between. Again, our tasting room is here Friday through Sunday in Linwood. You can find our spirits in Total Wine, Hagen, and the Central Market, Town and Country markets in the area, as well as some smaller independent spirit shops. And then we sell online. We can ship to the West Coast, and as well as delivery close by the distillery. We're here throughout the week as well for pickup. So any questions that you have, any nerdy gin knowledge, things that you want to know, please go ahead and leave comments on the YouTube video. We check them regularly. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on that, and have them up for other people looking for the same thing. So now at this point, you've tasted through 5 gins. Hopefully you're feeling great. You've got a nice meal planned for after or during this, whether you paired it with something or not. And we are always here to answer any questions that you have, and really just we want to spread the love of gin throughout the world. So thanks again for joining us. Take care.